Okay, we're back. We're live. We're Think Tech Talks, Fresh Air Hawaii. We're talking about hiking the land in Hawaii with Randy Ching of the Sierra Club, who's got a few miles under his belt hiking.
Just a few.
Welcome to the show, Randy.
Thank you.
There's so much to discuss here. I mean, I personally, you can't tell by my physical appearance, but I love hiking. I think, Hawaii has to be one of the best places in the universe for hiking. And I think we don't do enough hiking. So, but tell us about what the Sierra Club does in hiking.
Okay, the Sierra Club in Hawaii was founded in 1968, basically as a hiking club. There was one particular issue that sort of kick-started the club, but for the first, I'd say couple of decades, the club was known almost exclusively as a hiking club. And so people who joined the club were basically people who wanted to get outdoors, they wanted to hike. I mean, we got involved a little bit on the advocacy and the conservation issues, but that was sort of secondary to outings. And then when we finally got the money to hire an executive director, that's when we started doing a lot more advocacy.
That was Jeff Michelino or before Jeff?
Before Jeff, there was David Kimo Franco, who was the son of Chuck Franco, who was the Star Bulletin editor. And David was the first, before David, we had what you would have called an executive director, except we didn't have the money to pay him, so we called him office manager. but David was the first, and then Jeff, and now it's Robert Harris. And so now the club is more known for advocacy, protection of the environment than hiking. We still hike. I mean, the Oahu group is still a hiking outfit primarily, but I would say, as far as the club sort of what they're known for in the community is probably now more on the advocacy side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've been on the hiking side.
I joined the club about 30 years ago, a hiker, and I've pretty much been hiking with the club since then. I've been an outings leader for over 20 years. So I've led hikes all over the island, and I've done some hiking on the neighbor islands. But most of my hiking is done on this island. I know the trails here very well. And unfortunately, I would say over the last 10 years or so, the number of people coming out on our hikes, the Sierra Club hikes, has been dwindling. And we've talked about this a lot in our outings committee, and there's a lot of reasons. But the fact is, the number of people going out into nature and into our forests, it's dwindling.
You're a volunteer?
Nobody gets paid in the Sierra Club except Robert. Well, that's not true. Robert and our new hire, Caitlin. Except for those two, everybody else is a volunteer.
I met Caitlin. She's brilliant.
Yeah.
She's fabulous. She made a speech at the Energy Legislative briefing in the middle of January. She was fabulous.
Yeah, she's pretty terrific. We definitely want to keep her. Gotta find the money though. Yeah.
Okay, anyway, so I want to pick up on one of the things you said, and that is the decline of hiking. There was a time, I don't know if we're contemporaries, but in my time there was an awful lot of hiking going on in the 70s anyway, and people were hiking in large numbers. Every weekend they were going out. They had such a wonderful time. We really cared about it, and we had, all these trails that we did. I mean, everywhere. There was no barrier, really. You would go you have a wild idea, you want to go somewhere, you went. It was a sort of an open book kind of thing, and people loved it, including the mountains on the Big Island, which are really, really something. And I have worried, just a thought, I have worried that the way life has speeded up, at least in Oahu, it hasn't slowed down. It's speeded. Everybody has more obligations, more hanging on the calendar, more demands made on their time that people just don't. And the kids are so tied up in school with, both curricular and extracurricular activities, they don't know what it looks like. And so people talk about the land, and they try to protect the land, at least in theory, but they don't get out there on the land. And to me, it's a disconnect. If you really care about the land, and you go out and touch it, and you walk it, and more people ought to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I know the numbers for us have gone down, but I don't think necessarily that means that there are fewer hikers out there. When I look at the hiking landscape on Oahu, for example, I still see a tremendous number of tourists doing the usual Diamond Head, Manoa Falls kind of thing. There's a lot of people that come on their own when they go on the internet and they see these websites and says, see the hidden Hawaii, or go to these places where these crazy people go with their GoPro cameras and they hiking on ridges this wide, maybe 6 inches wide, and then 1,000 foot fall off on the right, 700 foot fall off on the left, and say, I want to do that. And so you got these crazy people doing that, and of course search and rescue is just going nuts because none of these people have any business doing that, but yet they see it on the internet and said, I want to do that. So they fly over here and they go in, and of course they get stuck and they call 911. Search and rescue has to come, and they put the lives of the search and rescue guys in danger, as well as their own lives. And so I mean, hiking has changed. I mean, I think because of the internet, a lot of the stuff that's happening is. Let's put it this way. People that would not have been here 20, 30 years ago are now here with no idea what they're doing. And that's why I strongly encourage them to hike with the Hawaiian Trail and Mountain Club or us, because we're very familiar with the trails. We clear them, we maintain them. In some cases, the Circa, we build them. And we know what we're doing, and we could tell people, if you want to do something different, you want to do something that the tourists don't normally do, we can make suggestions that are still safe, that you won't have to risk your life to do it. So I think hiking's changed. I don't know if the number of people has decreased in terms of just people going out on the trails, but the type of hikers probably is different now because of the internet, and it's just driving local governments nuts, because where before they would put up a sign and said, okay, don't go here, or this is the end of the trail. People go, and now they're suing because they get hurt, or somebody dies, and the family says, "Oh, where was the sign that says my mother or my wife or whatever shouldn't have gone there?" And so now the state, if they get enough of these cases, they're going to start shutting down state trails pretty soon. I mean, we've already lost trails where the access is through a private. Or private owner or a corporation, or if it's a state agency, for example, or a county agency like the Board of Water Supply. A real good example is the Hawaiian Trail and Mountain Club went up the Halava Trail. What they would do is they would stage at the Board of Water Supply's Halava pumping station, but not inside the property, outside the fence. And they would start there, they would go under H3, and they would go up, and they would head up to the summit. Well, the Board of Water Supply found out about it, and they prohibited the Hawaiian Trail and Mountain Club from even gathering outside the Board of Water Supply property, outside the fence, and because they would go around the fence, on the outside of the fence, and they go and says, no, we can't even do that. So that kind of stuff is, we've been having to deal more with that lately. Another good example, a very popular trail on this island is the Mariners Ridge Trail up in Hawaii Kai. Yeah. A Kamehameha schools just built a fence there at the trailhead for various reasons. And now the only two groups that are legally allowed to hike the trail is us, the Sierra Club, and the Hawaiian Trail and Mountain Club. So if we want to schedule a hike there, we can. And Kamehameha Schools is fine with us doing that, because they know we'll be responsible. Do you have to check in with them? Well, what we do is we call them and say, okay, we're going to do a hike on this date. We're going to send somebody down to pick up the key the day before or the week before, whatever. And right after the hike, the next day, we return the key, and they're fine with that. Mm-hmm. But the public should be allowed access to those kinds of trails. But what's been happening, and this is true at Haiku Stairs and Mariners Ridge, is that a small handful of hikers have caused a problem for the hiking community, because very inconsiderate people doing things that upset homeowners around the trailhead. Homeowners complain and say the hikers are doing this, that, and the other thing, and the whole hiking community gets tarred with this broad brush, and then access gets denied. And that's been happening more and more lately. So it's something that I'm really concerned about, and we've discussed this at our outings committee meetings, and I don't know what to do about it, to be honest. Well, there's been all these cases. I mean, I showed you this one that popped up June 18, 2007, report on Thompson versus Kioya, which was a broadening of the protection of landowners for recreational use. So it's the trailhead owner
now under this, under the, what do they call it, Hawaii recreational use statute, and this gloss here by this Supreme Court case in '07, offers greater protection to the landowner so that, you know, he can't be sued so easily. And that is all intended. I mean, and I'm not sure that you were campaigning for that. I think it was just good state policy to try to allow access and excuse landowners. Because some of these lawsuits were really silly.
Yeah.
Guy goes for a walk, you know, in the woods, and he falls down and he sues the owner of the woods. Come on. Or worse, he sues the owner of the access to the woods. It didn't even happen on the guy's property, and he's anyway. So this line of cases in the recreation use statute was all intended to make it easier on landowners, which is good, so they wouldn't withdraw permission.
Right.
And I don't think it has had the desired effect, because the lawyers who represent the injured parties, they come against the landowner anyway, and then the landowner, you know, brings in his insurance company, and before you know it, there's a settlement, even when there shouldn't be any liability, and the landowner says, "I'm not going to do this again. You guys can't come on anymore. I'm closing it down."
Right.
What a terrible result.
Yeah, I think that's what we want to avoid at all costs. I mean, when everybody gets lawyered up, I hate to say it, but usually nothing good comes of it, because, I mean, even if the landowner wins, they just don't want, like you said, they don't want to do it again. The easiest thing to do is just say, okay, let's put a fence up. I just don't let anybody here. And that's, unfortunately, that is what is happening, at least recently. Yeah.
Little by little, the best trails, the trails that everybody loved, you know, are behind a fence. I'm not sure this is the same issue, but I remember hiking in the Damon estate land, where H3 is right now, in Moanalo Valley.
Right.
And you had to ask them, but it was okay, because they would give you permission, and you go in there, and it was like a beautiful garden. Eden. It was like there was nothing there. It was unspoiled. The trails were so pretty, and you could go up all the way if you wanted.
You can, and you can still do it. Kamananui Valley is now owned by the state of Hawaii, and thanks to Trust for Public Land. And there's 2 state trails. One is up to the saddle, what we used to call Moanalua Valley Trail, and the other trail that a lot of people hike right now is Middle Ridge, which goes up to the top of Haiku Stairs. Not too many people do it, it's because it's challenging, and it's long, and people don't like long, challenging hikes. But that one, thank God, is still open. One that we used to love doing, it's one of the best hikes on this island, is going up to the highest point on Oahu from the Wailua site, Mount Ka'ala. From the trail that used to be right past the Wailua High School. That trail used to be called the DuPont Trail. And there's 3 private landowners you had to get permission from, but the 3 usually said yes. I mean, there was the rancher, was he wasn't real happy with hikers, but he usually said yes. And then I think Del Monte got out of the pineapple business or sugarcane, and somebody else bought, I think it was one of the ag chemical companies. I think it was Monsanto or Syngenta or something. And basically they said, nope, nobody.
They were worried that somebody would sabotage their crops.
There was vandalism. And you know, and again, there's a handful of hikers that, and maybe non-hikers in this case, they would go in and they would vandalize and steal things from the rancher, the macadamia nut grower, and Del Monte, or whoever it was before the current owner. And so basically they said, okay, we had enough. And so now
it's a great tragedy.
That was one of the best trails. If you read Stuart Ball's book, The Hiker's Guide to Oahu, which is the best hiking book on this island ever written, basically he said it's one of the best hiking trails on the island. I totally agree. I've done it a number of times, and you know, trails like that, which I would use the word iconic. You do that trail and you see some of the best views you'll ever see in your life. Not just in Hawaii, I mean, anywhere in the world.
Well, I want to we can take a break, but when we come back, I'd like to ask you, what is a good trail? How do you define it? How do you find it? How do you navigate it? And so forth. That's Randy Ching, Sierra Club, does lots of hiking, I can tell. This is Think Tech Talks, Fresh Air Hawaii, hiking the land in Hawaii. We'll be right back. Aloha, I'm Jay Fidel of Think Tech. We have some news for you. In addition to our Think Tech TV show and our Asia in Review show on Olelo 54, as of January 1st, we're adding Community Matters to play also 2 hours a week. Check out thinktechhawaii.com for the specific times of each of these shows. We hope you enjoy all three. Mahalo, I'm Jay Fidel.
Aloha, I'm Maria Kashem of Think Tech Hawaii, and I want to tell you about our Think Tech talk shows. If you didn't know it, Think Tech streams video and audio for all of its shows live on the internet from 2 to 5 p.m. every weekday afternoon, and we replay them all night long on ustream.tv. Visit thinktechhawaii.com for our live stream and YouTube links. Raise your awareness on Think Tech. I'm Maria Kashem, and I'll see you there.
Okay, we're back. We're live. We're Think Tech Talks here on a given Thursday, doing Fresh Air Hawaii with Randy Ching, Sierra Club, hiking the land in Hawaii. And so one of the things I wanted to ask you is, these days, you mentioned a book about hiking in Oahu, and there are others too. How do you find a trail that you like? And what is to like? In other words, what is a good trail in your definition? The kind of trail you'd hustle for?
Well, Stuart Ball's book is probably it's probably the best book on hiking on Oahu. There's always the internet. I mean, nowadays you could find anything on the internet, so you can do that. But I still rather have Stuart Ball's book because he's hiked every trail on this island a dozen times at least.
You know him?
Oh yes.
Okay.
Person.
Is he a Sierra Club guy?
He's a Hawaiian Trail and Mountain Club guy.
Okay.
But he tells you which trails are open to the public. It's perfectly okay to go here. These trails are closed for whatever reason. The private landowner or the state is forbidden it. Or, for example, Sacred Falls is now closed to the public because of the Mother's Day rock slide.
Yeah.
And so he'll tell you these are open to the public, these are not, what to look for. So that's really good. You get it right from the horse's mouth on someone is an extremely experienced hiker on Oahu. And he gives notes at the end of each hike and tells you, these are the things that are on the trail that you might find interesting. These are things to look for. The Sierra Club has published some small pamphlets about how to hike safely in Hawaii. And so we try to get those out to the public. The DLNR, the Department of Land and Natural Resources, they put out a hiking safety brochure as well. So there's places you can go to find the basics. And once you get the basics, then you're going to try and find hikes that are appropriate for your ability.
So that's one of the things.
Right.
Not one size fits all.
Well, for example, if you go to our website and you're looking at the hikes we offer, we use words like easy, moderate, strenuous, very strenuous, extremely strenuous, beginner hikes, family hikes. So we try to offer hikes to fit whatever ability there's out there in the public. I mean, a lot of people like easy hikes. They don't want to do hills or 10 miles. They want something flat for maybe like 2 miles, or something. And we offer those. The Hawaiian Trail and Mountain Club is a much tougher group than we. I mean, they offer
tougher.
Well, they offer
hikes are tougher
up and down. 12, 14, 15. Man, they go totally. They make their own trails and they go all these places. Unless you're an HTMC member, you'll never find it. I mean, I know a lot of guys in HTMC. Some of them are good friends of mine, but they offer much tougher hiking. And the big difference between us, it's not that even. It's not the fact that HTMC hikes are tend to be a lot harder. It's that they hike separate. Everybody's on their own, and you go as fast or slow as you like. You turn around whenever you like. The Sierra Club, we hike as a group. We have a leader and a sweep, and everybody stays in between. And so the whole way we're just one group, and that way we try not to get anybody lost. We never, that I know of, have lost people on the trail because we always stay together.
Is the sweep A volunteer like you?
Yeah, it's usually a leader, and so we normally have 2 leaders on every hike. But on hikes where we only have 1 leader, we'll ask someone to volunteer to be a sweep, and I said, please, you be the last one. Don't let anybody get behind you.
Yeah.
So then keep everybody in front of you.
Well, that's a much better way to hike, isn't it? For a lot of reasons, not just the safety, but for the social
aspect is much better. And HCMC, they've left. I'm not to say anything bad about them because I love them to death. They do great trail maintenance. But they've left a lot of people behind over the years, and it's amazing. No one has died. I've heard stories, guys calling them the next morning. Hey, where are you guys? I've been out here all night.
No.
I couldn't find any. And that just they used to happen with regularity. Thank God, they made some changes, and now they're starting to resemble us a little bit more. I mean, you're still on your own, but they're much more careful about making sure everybody gets back who started, and they're
not asking much.
No, and they're starting to do something. They don't have a sweep per se, but they have someone that's like a sweep, and so they're starting to understand the way we do things it's probably for the best. So we'll never be the same, but we're starting to look a little more.
I'm glad to hear that, because I remember that distinction, and that was a little tough on me. My upbringing, was all about staying together, and if you didn't stay together, somebody was making a mistake, somebody was at risk, But something you said though, Randy. I mean, that is communication has changed since you've been hiking, namely in the form of the cell phone. So the guy in the front can talk to the guy in the back, right? Usually. And if somebody's lost, they can call in, and I suppose you'd have a number somewhere, or there should be some kind of common place you can call. And that really puts another level of safety on it, don't you think?
Yeah. Up until the cell phone, we use the walkie-talkies, and that's line of sight, generally speaking. And so if the leader needed to communicate, if the sweep had to communicate with the leader, and they weren't line of sight, well, that was a problem. Whistle, you can always use the whistle, and the leaders were, up until very recently, we asked the leaders to carry whistles and then work out their own system of communications. Like if the sweep is unable to communicate via cell phone or walkie-talkie, to blow the whistle, and you hear the whistle, then you stop because something's happening back there, kind of thing. But yeah, nowadays with cell phone, it's pretty easy, except, and there's a huge except, where we hike, there's a lot of blind spots for cell phones. In other words, the places we go is not the places that cell phone coverage
Sure. Because if you're around the backside of the mountain, you're not going to get anything.
Yeah, a lot of the places we go, there's no cell phone coverage, and so we cannot depend solely on cell phones.
So a whistle helps.
Whistle is really good. None of us carry walkie-talkies anymore. So it's basically, if you keep the group together, hopefully you'll never have to get into a situation where if the cell phone doesn't work, you're kind of messed up. The whistle is usually dependable because you can hear that pretty well over a distance. But yeah, we like the fact that we have cell phones, but we know we can't count on it all the time.
Yeah. Little show and tell, Randy. Little show and tell. This is from my childhood. Acme Thundera. Does it mean anything to you?
No. Oh, a whistle.
Yeah. That's a really small whistle. This thing will blow your ears
off. Oh,
off.
I believe that. I still have about half a dozen whistles that I've kept because I know one of these days I'm going to need it. But whistles actually work really well out in the woods. They
Amazing. Do. Okay, more show and tell. Now you have these boots are not here by accident.
Right. So
these boots are made for walking, as they say.
Yeah. We have a lot of rain here on the wall. We got a lot of muddy trails, and that's. Before one quick story is like I've worked on my North Falls Trail a lot. Put in I don't know how many hundreds of hours on that trail. It's amazing how many people wear white tennis shoes, white pants, white shorts, white shirt. They go in and it's the trail is practically a stream and it's muddy and they come out and the shoes are brown and the socks are brown and it's like, who told you that
What were you thinking?
You think it's gonna be a sidewalk going on? You know, it's like, oh my. Anyway, so these are really wonderful shoes. If you hike a lot on Oahu, you might want to consider using them. If you go on a lot of muddy trails, this is a shoe. This is a tabi. It's basically a fisherman's shoe, but it's got spikes on them, and these spikes are really good because they're about what, quarter inch or so, and
stick right out,
and they're really good for places that you need traction, and they're really good because they're high. So if the water or the mud is really deep, you got some protection with it. The only problem, of course, it's not very stiff. So under here, you don't get a lot of support. Your typical shoe. The typical shoe that I like to wear if I'm going to go on a really easy hike and I don't really need much in terms of traction for mud stuff, is a shoe like this. It's a low cut. It doesn't have a lot of ankle support, but you know it's light and it's got some traction. You know, it's got a little bit of sole where you can see it's. It'll give you a little bit of grip, but this is for hikes that are not a sidewalk exactly, but you know, not too difficult, and you don't expect a whole lot of difficulty on the terrain. So this is a really good shoe to have, something like this. It's light, like I say, it doesn't cost a lot, and you know, you could probably wear it for 15, 20 years.
It's a walking shoe, is what it is.
Walking shoe with a little bit of attraction, and this thing, I have used this for walking. It's very comfortable, even on sidewalks.
Yeah.
It's very comfortable. So this is the kind of shoe I think most people would find very comfortable if they're not.
But you wouldn't wear this in a heavy mud situation.
No. Something like this would be much better for something like, for example, if you're going to hike up to Haiku Stairs from the back way from Wanalua Valley, Kamananui, you would want to wear something more like this because you're going to run into a whole bunch of mud.
Yeah.
So something like that.
But now that's really important up there when you hit mud, especially not the thick mud, but the thin mud, where you could slip on it.
Yeah, I was recently on a hike where, you know, it had recently rained. It wasn't a lot of mud, but all the rocks and all of the hard pan, the soil, the ground that's left after the topsoil has kind of washed away. It was all slick, and so it was treacherous footing. I fell a couple times, and that kind of, you wouldn't really want to use something like this, because that even with the sole being full of
mud gets right into the
it's not going to prevent you from sliding on something that's really slick like a hard pan or rocks. And the kind of soil we have on Oahu, a lot of the hard pan, when it gets wet, there's almost no shoe that's really gonna. Even something like this, you'd have a hard time, but this is much better. But you know, that kind of, you just have to be real careful. Roots, for example, a lot of people don't realize just how slick roots are when they're wet. And so, if you've never hiked in trails with a lot of roots, you'll fall a lot until you figure out, well, maybe I shouldn't step on the roots. So, you know, there's shoes you can use that give you a lot more traction. What's really popular nowadays, and I've seen this more and more, is that people are starting to wear the glove shoes.
Oh, where like each toe stick out.
Each toe, it looks like a glove, really, for your feet. Yeah. And each toe has its own.
Why is that?
Well, I don't know why. I think it's very light, for one thing, and some people find it more comfortable than this. I haven't tried it yet, but I don't think I use, just because there's very little support underneath. So you step on a rock with those, man, that's painful. You could break your toe, for one thing. You can break your toe, and it's very painful. So I like the support that hiking shoes give, but I'm seeing that more and more. A lot of people use sandals, the Tevas, and we discourage that because we feel your toes should be protected always. Yeah. So whatever you're wearing for hiking, we feel your toes should be covered. Yeah. But the sandals are increasingly popular. Those glove shoes are really popular. And I guess depends on the kind of hikes you do. Some people are even, I've seen people going out barefooted. There's people who are very comfortable. They say it's actually much better than wearing shoes.
Maybe it is.
Yeah, for some people, I'm sure it is.
I wouldn't try that. I wouldn't get 5 feet that way.
Right, but I mean, for them, probably, the lifetime of being barefoot, they're very comfortable that way.
I want to take a break, Randy, but when we come back, I'd like to talk about technique. I'd like to talk about, for example, one piece of equipment comes to mind is a hiking stick of one kind or another, like your advice on that. But I also like to talk about how you use your hands and how you balance and how your mindset when you're going up or down a steep hill. Really like to talk. God, this is valuable. I hope you're listening. Okay, Randy Ching, Sierra Club, Think Tech Talks, Fresh Air Hawaii, Hiking the Land in Hawaii. We'll be right back.
Yeah, in fact, the last hike I did was just
Castle and Cook, Hawaii. Investing in Hawaii, creating communities, and providing for the needs of our state. Collateral Analytics, empowering the real estate industry to make better informed property investment decisions. The Foreign Trade Zone, bringing the benefits of the Foreign Trade Zone programs to Hawaii businesses and entrepreneurs. Galen Ho, a senior executive of BAE Systems, a global defense, security, and aerospace company. Hawaiian Electric Company and its affiliates Maui Electric and Hawaii Electric Light Company on Hawaii Island. The Hawaii Energy Policy Forum, incorporating diverse perspectives to design a flexible and forward-looking energy strategy. Hawaii Energy, the state's energy and efficiency program created to help Hawaii's residents and businesses adopt a clean energy lifestyle. Hawaii Gas, helping Hawaii achieve its transition to clean energy and a better energy future. Hawaii Pacific Health, bringing technology and teamwork together to transform healthcare in Hawaii. The High Tech Development Corporation, attached to DBED, is the state's leading technology agency. The Scheidler Family Foundation, supporting educational, cultural, and charitable organizations, including Think Tech. Okay, that's Randy Ching, Sierra Club, having a great discussion about hiking the land in Hawaii. There's so many aspects to it, and it's so sort of basic to living here, and yet we don't do enough of it. This is Think Tech Talks, and our series is Fresh Air Hawaii. So, Randy, what about what about sticks? What about hiking sticks to stabilize yourself, to get a perch somehow when you need one? How useful is that?
Well, like I was saying, I for the first 20 years that I hiked, I never used any walking sticks, but lately I've started to use it. I hiked the Appalachian Trail in 2004.
Really?
The entire thing, all 2,100.
Whoa, starting on the Canadian border?
No, I mean, it's Maine to Georgia.
Okay.
And so I saw almost everybody use 2 walking sticks. And I guess that's what they do on the mainland, because I don't see that many people using 2 walking sticks here. But on the Appalachian, everybody has hiking sticks. And in fact, the guy I was hiking with, Phil and I were one of the only 2 people that were using 1 walking stick. He had a bamboo pole, I had a coffee pole, a hiking sticks made out of the coffee plant. Mm-hmm. And everybody else had 2. We saw like only 1 person that didn't use everybody except that one guy.
What's the benefit?
Well, I think 2 is you get a nice upper body workout. It helps to, and this is really important when you're doing long distance hike, it really helps alleviate pressure on your knees. Whenever you're going uphill or downhill, those sticks, you can put a lot of your weight through your arms on those sticks, and then that means your knees don't have to take all the pounding and all the bending and all the weight. So you do millions and millions of steps. Like you do the AT, you're taking between 5 and 7 million steps, and every step you're going on a uphill or a downhill, on an incline of any sort, you're going to put pressure on your knees and on your ankles, and so those sticks will actually help keep your lower body joints from being overburdened. And I think it also helps build up your arms and your shoulders, and people like the fact that it keeps them balanced. Anytime you slip or you fall, the sticks help you regain your balance real quickly. Yeah. On this island, I always like to have one hand free, and that's because a lot of the places I go to, there's a lot of roots and rocks, and you tend to
steep stretches.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of hikes I do where severe inclines, 60, 70 degree. I mean, very steep. And so I always need one hand to grab onto trees, roots, rocks, weeds, grass, anything I can basically get my home, just to pull myself up or to get from here to here so I can get to the next spot. And so especially when I'm going downhill, if I don't have something to grab onto, if I slip and I start rolling or sliding downhill, if I don't have anything to grab onto,
That's what I was going to ask you. So when you're going down, especially down, well, both ways really, you want to have your hand on some shrubbery.
Whenever I'm on any place that's a steep incline, I always have my hand. If it's not grabbing onto, it's very close to something that in case I need it, I can grab it. I'll just temporarily stop my momentum, and that's what I want. Because if you build up momentum going downhill and there's nothing to grab,
you're going to get hurt.
Oh, you're going to get severely hurt.
Yeah.
So the kind of hiking I do, especially where I hike, I always want to have a hand free.
Yeah. Which takes me to a friend of mine went hiking on the Colorado Trail, and I forget the name of the stop there, but this one stop, people sleep there. It's only a short way out, but it's still remote.
Well, Hanakapiai is the 2 miles in.
Hanakapiai,
yeah.
That's the one. Anyway, somewhere just beyond Hanakapiai, he fell. And he fell down the side of the, it gets pretty steep on the side of the mountain.
Yes, it does.
And he broke a bunch of bones, and it was pretty serious. And he was okay ultimately, but it was scary. And I just wonder what your thought is on sort of the mental set when you're walking along a shelf like that, and it's only a foot wide, and it isn't flat, and there are parts which sort of drop off. How do you, scary. I mean, and sometimes when you have a scary thing, you get scared, and that makes it more likely, because you're scared, it makes it more likely you're going to make a false step. Mm-hmm. How do you deal with that?
Well, I find out that I find it's usually just exactly the opposite, that where there's obvious and imminent danger, people tend to pay attention. So that's actually when very few actually, what I find is where I see the most people slip and hurt themselves is when it's flat and people feel there's no need to pay attention to where they place their feet. So they start gabbing with their neighbor or whatever, they're not looking around, and then they're not paying attention to where their feet go. And that's when people tend to fall, is when they think, there's no danger here, I don't have to really. It's when people get in really places which are obviously dangerous, and it looks like you could die people tend to be really focused. That's what I find. Because
can't you be too focused? Don't you have to be a little loose, a little?
Well, yeah. I mean, people they're not looking around, listening to the birds. I mean, they're very tunnel vision, and I think that's one of the things you want to do when you hike is you want to at least look around a little bit. You don't want to run through 10 miles and say, what did you see? Oh, nothing. I just wanted to get,
I looked in front of me. I looked at my feet.
Right. But what I find is when people come to obviously dangerous places, that's when they tend to focus really hard. But where I see most of the falls is when they're not paying attention. And usually they're not paying attention because they think, it's flat, and I don't have to pay attention because, there's no snakes in Hawaii, there's no bears, there's no whatever. I mean, it's like, there's nothing here I have to worry about, but you should pay attention to every step. It doesn't matter if it's flat and there's no rocks, because you can fall anytime.
True. Well, I'll give you an example. And this would be in the trail up in Aiea Loop Trail. Mm-hmm. Okay. Some of those, I don't know if it's been maintained recently, but some of those little tiny trails have fallen down. Mm-hmm. And it's not very wide.
A lot of washouts on that trail.
Yeah, a lot of washouts. And
trees fall all the time on that trail.
So you're walking along and you're observant, and you see like this, maybe a couple of feet have been washed out. And it's pretty scary. How are you going to get from one side to the other when it's nothing there? And so you have to make a leap. I guess you have to gird your loins, get your strength together. Maybe even back up a little and whoop, go over the gap. Now that's not easy, and you better be in the right frame of mind for that.
Yeah, part of hiking is dealing with obstructions on the trail. I mean, it's very unrealistic to expect every trail you hike on to be 100% well maintained. That's just not going to happen, especially considering the amount of resources that DLNR gets, for example, Na'alahele, the trail system here, the kind of resources they get, it's very unrealistic to expect the trails to be 100% maintained. So you're gonna have to deal with fallen trees, especially that here. And some of the trees that fall are very big. And so, you know, one of the first things is, okay, if it's huge and I can't get under it and I can't get over it, do I go uphill or do I go downhill? Because there's no way I'm going to get over it. And so, you know, usually when you go on a trail, somebody has decided already before you. So you can see that most of the people went left or right, uphill or downhill.
Follow the track.
I mean, because, hey, they figured it out. But if you're the first one, then you're going to have to decide. And it's not always obvious. I mean, there's this one section. It's on the Kapalama Loop Trail. It's right behind Kamehameha Schools as you're heading up to the summit. And there's one part of the trail that's not maintained at all. Even HTM doesn't maintain it. Sierra Club is the only group that maintains it, and we do it rarely, where there's a tremendous amount of tree fall. And because the trees that go there are shallow rooted, there's a lot of wind and rain up there. And I've come across so many tree falls where I look up, I look down, and it's like, okay, which way do I go? Because either way it looks rough, and you gotta, because if you want to keep going, you gotta go one way or the other.
Does a piece of rope help?
In those situations, no, not really. What really helps is a chainsaw, actually. So once in a while, we do trail maintenance, and we'll bring up a chainsaw or two, and we'll open it up, and it'll be good for a couple months, and then the trees start falling again. And so that's a real big issue on Oahu, is trail maintenance. The Hawaiian Trail and Mountain Club is excellent. They do trail maintenance 50 weekends a year. My God, they're incredible. I know a lot of the people on that trail crew. They're incredibly dedicated.
It's really important that that be done, though, isn't it?
Oh,
I mean,
absolutely.
it's a matter of keeping it accessible.
Yeah, I mean, they have four guys on chainsaw. On weed whackers. Sorry, 4 guys with weed whackers every weekend, and it's mostly uluhe, which is the false staghorn fern, and that long grassy things like California grass, molasses grass. That's what that weed whackers are for. And then there's a whole bunch of other people there with sickles, machetes, loppers, hand loppers, and the big, 2-foot loppers, double jointed loppers for tree branches like this. And so between the weed whackers and the other trail clearers, HTM, it wasn't for them. I'd swear 90% of the trails in this island are closed. You couldn't hike them.
For comparison, my wife and I went to the Milford Track in New Zealand, one time, and the government runs it, and they bring students in, college kids, and the college kids actually build wooden sidewalks in the deep forest, and all you have to do is walk on the sidewalk. You don't have to be troubled by any trees and obstacles and whatnot, and you can really enjoy, because it's all around you, and you don't have to focus that much.
Right, and I think Oahu could be like that. I mean, we have incredible trails here. We could take some of the tourist business that we have and expose them to hiking in the great outdoors if we had that kind of hiking system they have in New Zealand. If we for whatever reason have decided that we're not going to put the money into trails, we're going to put money into beaches, we're going to put money into Waikiki or whatever, but the hiking, the mountains, the Mauka stuff, it's really pitifully underfunded, and I think we could do a lot better, a lot more with it, but the priorities being what they are with state government, I don't want to get into that. It's like 27 shows, but it's very unfortunate.
Yeah, well, I mean, where's this going to go? We have 6 minutes left, and I wanted to ask you, where's it going to go? Both in your expectation, your perfect world, and also the reality.
Okay, well, we talk a lot in our audience committee meetings about expanding our outreach in terms of social media, for example. Because obviously Facebook, you have Meetup.com. You know, a lot of people are hiking now with Meetup. I mean, you know, on this island, there's a lot of hikers that aren't with the Sierra Club and HTMC. The Soulmates, for example, they hike every Wednesday, but mostly retired people, but just a bunch of tough hikers, very, very experienced hikers. They go out, they hike all these wonderful trails in the island. It's every Wednesday. You have a lot of the Korean hiking clubs. The Koreans, oh my God.
Coming from Korea.
Yeah, the ones who
It's a vacation for them.
well, I don't know what it is about hiking, but they love it. They love the mountains, and there's a bunch of, a lot of the trails are hiking Makiki, for example. Bunch of Korean hiking clubs. So you know there are hiking communities. They just don't happen to be HTMC and Sierra Club. So at one point, I'd say we were doing a lot of the organized hikes on this island was us, but lately it's been a whole bunch of other people, a Meetup especially. I don't see state funding increasing for trail maintenance in this state. I see more and more trails being closed because of what we've been discussing. So as far as trail access, I see it as a huge issue, and it's going to get worse. You know, on Maui right now, there's a case pending before DLNR called the Haleakala Trail case, and it's basically private landowners wanting to close a historic trail and
But into Haleakala, around Haleakala?
in the area of the crater, and I'm sorry, no, not in the, but outside the crater, but on the mountain itself. And then there's a public access group called, I forget what the acronym stands for, but PATH. And they public access trails Hawaii, I think, and they are trying to preserve public access. But I see more and more of those kinds of issues popping up, and it doesn't look good, to be honest. It's just not a high priority with the state. It's just not. And private landowners are becoming increasingly hesitant to be exposed to liability issues, and so I see them leaning more toward just closing off public access.
How about the federal parks? You know, we used to go to, you know, Mauna Loa a lot. And there was a place called Summit Cabin on the top, and Red Hill halfway. And we'd hike there, and it was great hiking. You had to navigate by the Ahus, some of which I'm sure have been turned over and are no longer visible. But this was great. Is the federal government protecting, preserving these trails?
The national parks. And this goes back to what's happening in Washington, D.C., but the national parks are not getting the funding they used to get. So Hawaii Volcanoes National Park, Haleakala National Park, great hiking trails there. They're well maintained given the resource base or the level of money or funding they get, but I don't know if they'll continue to get that kind of funding. I've hiked Havo, Kilauea Crater, Kilauea Iki recently. It was in good shape. I have hiked within Haleakala Crater in the last 3-4 years. It's been in good. Was in good shape. So I don't know if federal funding is going to be an issue or not, but so far it seems to be holding up.
Why do you do this, Randy?
Well, I love hiking. I mean, I like being outdoors. Especially I like being in the woods. You know, I like being at the beach too, but there's something about being in the forest that's it's really great. It's just something I enjoy doing. You know?
Has it helped your health? I mean,
oh yeah, I mean, you know, yeah, I spend a lot of time hiking, but I also spend a lot of time doing trail maintenance in terms of improving the trail. I've spent the last 3 years basically working on 2 trails, Kuli'o'o and Hawaii Loa Trail in East Oahu. Put in a whole bunch of steps, did a lot of the maintenance of the trail. So I find myself feeling a sense of ownership for those 2 trails because I've spent so many thousands of hours on those 2 trails over the last 3 years, and I just carried up a whole bunch of stuff to put in all those steps and it's a labor of love, but I like doing it. It's because I just like being out there, and every time I take a break and I sit down and I look out at the ocean, or I look out on the windward side, it's just like, that's why I'm out here, I mean, being out here, it's just an incredible feeling. Yeah.
Never go alone?
Most of my tour work, I'm by myself. I mean, I'd love to have company, but not everybody is retired like I am, and not everybody wants to hump 40, 50 pounds of materials up the trail like I do. So when I do get help, I really appreciate it. Sometimes I Shanghai hikers coming up the trail. Hey, please take this up over there. I need all these steps. I need all these stakes up there. Yeah, I can't do it by myself. And hikers 100% of the time happy to do it. Just one each. I tell them one each. That's all I need.
What's your plan in continuing? How long will you continue?
Well, I'm not going to be doing this forever. Obviously, I don't know how much longer I'm going to be hiking. Some people hike to the day they die. I don't think I'll be like that. I've already cut back. So I see myself slowing down. I'm still going to hike, but maybe another 10, 15 years,
Okay, all right.
Before I call it quits,
So, last question, I mean, hopefully somebody out there, has listened and learned from this discussion. But I wonder what you would tell them, because the likelihood is that the person who has listened and learned hasn't done it much. Mm-hmm. So what would you say to them, to the generation who might do this going forward?
Okay, well, go with somebody who's experienced. I mean, no matter what kind of hiking you're contemplating, just go with someone who can at least talk to you about the basics. Someone who's done a lot of hiking, and so they can suggest places you might want to go. Like when people ask me, because they know I've hiked the Appalachian Trail, they says, well, where should I go? I said, go wherever you want, but don't do the whole thing, for example. I said, do a couple nights. Pick some place you think you'd love going. Spend one night or 2 nights there, and then, you find out, wow, this is great, I want to do more of it. Well, then do a week. Spend 5 nights or 6 nights on the trail. And then if you still like that, well, then you might want to consider doing the whole thing or whatever, But yeah, go with someone who's been there, can kind of teach you the ropes,
And then someday you can teach somebody else the ropes.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Randy. Randy Ching, Sierra Club, a hiker par excellence, lifelong, gee whiz, fabulous. This is Think Tech Talks, Fresh Air Hawaii, hiking the land in Hawaii. I hope we could do this again, Randy.
Sure.
Take care. Aloha.
Thanks, Jay.